I just wanted just to say though, man, like, you know, just because a lot of people, a whole lot of time, guys, them don't um, give the person appreciation. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? So I just wanted to say, just thank you for the time to even having me. You know what I mean?
no, I'm glad you came.
Like I said, like I watched your interview on Vlad, and you know, my whole thing with when it comes to cooperation, right? I'm like, it might sound like when somebody be like, man, how can you even say that based off of the situation that I was in?
You're under the misconception that it's fair.
Yeah,
And that they're concerned about justice. That's not what they're concerned about.
exactly.
They want to win.
That's the key word. They want to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm sitting back and I said, so you mean to me I got to fight for my life then? And he says, yes, you got to fight for your life. And he said, and I'm going to tell you this right here. He said, you could be in for a fight if you want to go to trial. I said, well, what do you recommend them doing? He said, I'm going to tell you this right here. He says, they want something. I said, well, what they want? I said, because you know I ain't trying to tell them nothing. He said, I don't stop you right there. We already been down that line with them. We don't got to worry about that right there. He said, because they don't want nobody under you. He said, you can't do nothing for them going to get nobody under you. Then plus on top of that, everybody who's under me is locked up with me already.
They already cooperated too. They're already cooperating against you.
Well, like I said,
right?
None of my friends, all my people we don't do that.
Okay.
We don't do that. To a point, I got word already back from certain co-defendants and all this saying, hey, yo, bro, you ain't got work. Whatever you want to do, we down. Like, we ain't going, I really have to say this. My sister, baby daddy, he was in our situation. And he got word to me and said, hey, bro, whatever you want to do, I'm down because I can't cooperate against you and look your niece in the face.
Right.
You know what I mean? But, you know, like I said, I judge people off of their honesty. You know what I'm saying? And honesty can sometimes hurt you, but when it's in the plan, right, it can't hurt because from being honest, that make people actually do want to deal with you. So like even when you say, like when certain people say, oh man, I ain't going to his podcast and they're not business minded enough to actually realize that they're missing a good game. Mm-hmm. Right? But there's one thing I just wanted to ask you though. I want to say when you first got caught, right? Did you have any regrets of anything? And what was the lesson that you actually got from it, right? Because my channel is called Lessons to Legacies, right? So I want to know, what is your legacy, right? Or if you're trying to leave behind a legacy, and what was the lesson, if one, of what you went through?
What was as far as just getting caught and going to prison?
Yeah, like, do you regret any of that?
Oh yeah, I regret it. You know, there's always the guys that, oh no, I don't regret any of it. It made me the man I am today. Man, listen, I got out at 49 years old, basically, really a few months before I turned 50. I had to rebuild my life at 50 with nothing. The only reason I had any money at all was because another inmate, when I was getting out, heard me joking about getting out with nothing. Like literally, you know, the card they give you. Mm-hmm. I didn't have I was joking that I'm gonna have so little money on the card, can't even pay the fee to use the card. Like I was gonna get out with like $1.29. The fee's $1.50. So I was joking about that. He actually one day he had sent money to my books before because you know he was spending too much. You know you can only spend like $350 a month or something. Yeah. So he's sending me a couple hundred. So I buy him stuff, right? And one day when I'm leaving, I want to say it was $400. It might have been $300, but I think it was probably, let's say $400. One day I go to check, and I'm only 4 or 5 days out leaving. I go to check my account. Boom, there's $400 on my account. But I saw it was from the person that used to send it for him. And I go to him. I said, bro, did you have somebody send me money? And he's like, yeah. And I went, I'm not going to commissary. I'm leaving on Monday, or whatever it was. And he looked at me and said, no, I know, but you're going to need something. You're going to need some stuff. And I was just like, wow. He said, I know it's cute, the whole $1.29 thing. That's cute. Because that's basically what I had on my account. Yeah. Because that's cute, but you're going to need some shit.
Yeah.
He's like, I know you think it's cute. You're getting out with 2 pairs of sweatpants and some t-shirts. And sure enough, look, That was the only money I had. I got out 4 or 5 days after I went to the halfway house. I went and spent $300 at Walmart.
Hmm.
My entire wardrobe was $300 in Walmart for about a year or so. Till I got to the halfway house, and still probably 6 months. I still don't buy anything unless it's at fucking Ross or Marshalls. I just have that. I have that broke mentality. Doesn't matter. My wife's always joking. She's like, her idea of broke is she's in the hole, but you're in the hole $1,000. You're 2 months or 2 weeks behind, or 2 months behind on your car payments, and a month behind on your insurance. You're in the middle of eviction. She's like, that's broke. She's like, your idea of broke is vastly different. My idea of broke is I've only got a few months of reserves, So yeah, when I got out, well, I got out, and I remember this is basically back to what I kind of learned was that, and this is so funny because it seems like something your dad would say, but prior to going to prison, like I had all the money in the world and tons of friends, and I was miserable. And then I went to prison, I had nothing, but I was perfectly content being locked up. And then I got to the halfway house and I got out, and I was just happier with nothing and having a purpose of writing. I wrote true crime stories when I was locked up. Like that became my whole life. And then I got out and I wanted to turn that into something. It wasn't this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, it wasn't this. But your dream of how you're going to make it or do well has to be flexible, right? Like, this isn't what it exactly was. I wanted to do kind of more of a documentary style true crime channel. Mm-hmm. You've seen those, right? Where they do B-roll and the guy's like, John so-and-so, and they tell the whole thing, and there's interviews with people, but it's all kind of voice. Like, I didn't even think about YouTube. But then it became YouTube, and then that was a lot of editing. And then I kind of realized, like, this would be the better just interviewing other former criminals. And then that kind of turned into what this is. I would love it if this turned into some kind of a mechanism for a production company that turns some of these stories into true crime documentaries and maybe series. And if that never happens, that's okay. Like, my happiness is not contingent on ultimately having that happen. It's kind of like my wife and I joke about this, and I've joked about it with other people, where it's like I'm trying to get a series or a movie made about my story. But the truth is, I'm enjoying going through that process, because the truth is this. What if I might end up, let's say I end up getting a movie made. What would really happen is my wife and I would go to the movies. We'd go watch my movie about me, and we'd walk out and go, it's like all that time and that work and that effort and you go and you're like, that could have been better. That guy's way too tall to play me, and that never happened. This never happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, things don't end up happening the way you want, so you kind of have to enjoy the journey, and you have to be fluid and understand that you got to be flexible, and things are going to change. And I think that flexibility is probably a lot of happiness and enjoying the moment. Prison definitely taught me to enjoy the moment, walking the track, going out and walking the track at 5 o'clock when they open the doors, and you go to the track and it's still dark, and then they open the gates just as the sun's coming up, and it's cold out, because in Florida it's never cold. But I would go out and it would be cold, and I'd be the only one out there walking the track, and it was just like amazing. Yeah, it was a feeling that even to this day I don't have.
Yeah, because you know what mine is?
What?
Riding in that truck by myself. It's like walking the track. That's where I get all my thinking from, and all that, everything that I'm doing, everything I want to do, me just driving in the truck. That's why it's easy for me to just go take a car and just say, man, I'm going to mix. It's about me being connected with myself.
Yeah, in that moment.
In that moment.
What about, listen, this was insane to me. I'll never get this feeling back. Is the first time I got out of prison. Oh wait, it was Patrick Bet David? Yeah, I went on Patrick Bet David, and they bought me a ticket, and I flew to, he was in Texas at the time, walking through the airport, only been out of the halfway house about 2 months, walking through the airport, fresh out of pit prison. It was surreal. Like I was laying in a bunk bed a few months earlier, and I'm walking through walking through the airport, and you can't even, the surreal feeling of that freedom of and I kept waiting, by the way. Like when I walked through and I gave them my, you buy they bought the ticket, but when I kept thinking, like when you have to show like your ticket, and I kept thinking they're going to pull me out. They're going to say, "Hey, wait a minute, Mr. Cox."
Mistake.
or you're on a notice, a no-fly list, or you're on probation, you can't leave, or you're on whatever it was. I just kept thinking, this is surreal. They're coming to get me soon.
Yeah.
It's kind of like every time that somebody knocks on the door and you just get out of prison and you're at home and somebody knocks on the door, and you think for just a second when you hear that knock, the marshals are here. They realize they made a mistake. Yeah. They're bringing me back.
Yeah.
But because, what was it? What'd you do, 10?
Yeah.
10? After 10 years, I know at 3:45, just before 4 o'clock count, you feel the anxiety.
I feel all that. I feel all that going into the shower. I'm looking for shower shoes.
Shower slides.
I'm still
shower
crazy.
Slides.
You know what I mean? But that's another thing. But I'm doing too. And then before we go, I'm coming with a trucking line, right? Like for truck drivers and stuff.
Yeah.
For women too, with things of that nature, like shower shoes and all that kind of stuff, because that's what they use when they're on the road.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So a lot of stuff I'm emulating as far as prison with certain stuff or whatever. But like I say, man, I appreciate you, man. And listen, lessons in the legacies, man. You actually one of them.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we can do more work soon.